The human diplomat Q arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters, his black suit pristine against the metallic sheen of the alien architecture. The massive crystalline spires of the Council station orbited the neutral star Vega, deliberately, positioned at the crossroads of 7 major trade routes. Q adjusted his red silk tie, a small reminder of Earth among the dizzying array of alien fashions surrounding him. Representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations watched with thinly veiled contempt as the human took his position at the speaking podium. Earth was the newest addition to galactic society, and many council members considered humans barely more evolved than animals. The Droxy ambassador, with his 12 compound eyes, didn't bother hiding his disgust, clicking his mandibles in the insectoid equivalent of a sneer. "The Earth representative will now address the council," announced the moderator, a floating orb with a pleasant synthetic voice. The orb's surface rippled with colors as it spoke, the standard translator for all council proceedings. Q stood, tall despite being physically dwarfed by many of the alien representatives. The Kulak delegation, with their 3-meter frames, hunched forward in their specialized seating pods, while the gaseous Vril representatives hovered in containment bubbles near the ceiling. The council chamber itself was a marvel of engineering. Adaptive gravity zones, atmosphere pockets for species with different breathing requirements, and temperature gradients to accommodate the biological diversity of the gathered delegates. "Distinguished representatives," Q began, his voice steady, "Earth extends its gratitude for this opportunity to address the Council. Though we are newcomers to your galactic community, humans have much to offer in science, culture, and cooperation." Counselor. Tay of the Stellar Dominion leaned toward his associate, General Han. Tay's scaled skin glistened under the chamber lights, the ceremonial crests on his head fully extended to signal his superior status. "This should be amusing," Tay whispered, mandibles clicking softly. "Their planet hasn't even unified under one government. They still fight among themselves over resources while pretending to be civilized." Han's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of agreement among his species. "The Dominion has stood for 6,000 years. These humans barely mastered space travel a century ago." As Q began his address on human rights within galactic space, he noticed subtle movements at the chamber's periphery. Security forces, the distinctive silver-armored Vex drones controlled by Dominion officers, quietly sealed the chamber doors. Their humanoid forms moved with machine precision, energy staffs held at the ready. "Earth proposes an exchange program," Q continued, pretending not to notice the security lockdown. "Human scientists have developed unique approaches to quantum computation that we believe could benefit." A holographic alert appeared before Council Leader Rim, and with a slight gesture of his 6-fingered hand, he muted Q's microphone. The massive view screens around the chamber switched to display security footage. A human ship, allegedly firing on a Dominion patrol vessel near Jupiter's orbit. "Evidence has come to our attention," announced Rim, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns, "that humans have committed an act of aggression against Dominion peacekeepers." Q's eyes widened. "That's impossible. We've issued strict orders." "Silence." Tay stood, his ceremonial armor clattering. "The Dominion calls for immediate sanctions against Earth and the detainment of their representative for questioning." The Council erupted in murmurs and clicks and whistles, the cacophony of multiple species debating simultaneously. Q recognized the trap immediately. The Dominion had already decided Earth would serve as an example to other emerging worlds with ambitions above their station. The footage was clearly fabricated. The Dominion's specialty was information warfare before physical conquest. The robot guards moved in perfect synchronization, their silver exoskeletons gleaming as they approached the human podium. Behind, them organic troops, the feared Dominion vanguard with their enhanced strength and surgically modified bodies, formed a second line of attack. "I urge the Council to investigate this claim properly," Q said, raising his voice above the din. "Earth has strictly adhered to all established protocols since." When the first guard struck Q from behind, the diplomat didn't flinch. The energy staff, capable of incapacitating most organic beings, connected with his shoulder with enough force to shatter bone. Yet Q remained standing, not even stumbling from the impact. The chamber fell silent. The guard, a biomechanical hybrid of the Dominion's elite forces, struck again, this time aiming for Q's head. The staff connected with a sound like thunder, but Q simply turned, his previously warm eyes now bottomless voids. The guard's biomechanical implants began to malfunction, sparks flying from the neural interface at his temples. He collapsed to his knees, his organic components aging visibly, skin wrinkling, hair whitening, as though years were passing in seconds. "You have made a grave miscalculation," Q said softly, his voice somehow carrying to every corner of the now silent chamber. The blackness in his eyes spread, dark veins appearing beneath his skin like shadows moving underwater. Across the chamber, environmental alarms began to sound. The atmospheric regulators detected an unknown energy signature emanating from the human diplomat. Something ancient and impossible that the Council's advanced sensors couldn't categorize. Several delegates rushed for the sealed exits as Q loosened his tie with deliberate slowness. The human's movements were unhurried, almost gentle as the darkness within him began to unfurl. "You should not have done that," Q said softly as the guard collapsed, skin suddenly withered as though decades had passed in seconds. The biomechanical soldier's remaining organic components crumbled like ancient parchment, while his synthetic parts sparked and went dark. The other guards hesitated, energy staffs humming but no longer advancing. The chamber's environmental systems frantically attempted to compensate for the sudden energy anomaly. Overhead, emergency containment fields shimmered into existence, casting prismatic patterns across the terrified delegates. Several of the gaseous Vril representatives condensed into their densest forms, a defensive posture their species hadn't needed to adopt in centuries. Councillor June rose from her seat, 6 tentacle arms bracing against the polished council table. Her skin, normally a calm blue, pulsed with alarmed purple patterns. As representative of the median cluster, she had centuries of diplomatic experience, yet nothing in her long life had prepared her for this. "What trickery is this?" she demanded, voice amplified by her translator module. "The council chamber is protected by 13 layers of security scanning. No weapon could have been brought inside." The hovering security drones circled Q, their sensors going haywire as they attempted to analyze him. One by one, their systems failed, and they clattered to the floor like dead insects. Q loosened his tie with deliberate calm. The simple, red silk slid through his fingers as the darkness beneath his skin became more pronounced. Veins of shadow spread across his face like a spiderweb of living ink. "Long ago, Earth faced extinction," he explained, his voice carrying an unnatural echo that triggered warning lights on the Council's translator systems. Not from war or environmental collapse as you might expect, but from something far worse. Holographic displays around the chamber flickered with static as Q's influence spread. On the largest screen, images appeared, not transmitted from any known source, but seemingly pulled from Q's own memories. The Council members watched in horrified fascination as scenes from Earth's hidden history played out. They saw the invisible plague that had swept Earth 2 centuries earlier, a quantum anomaly that unraveled the very fabric of life itself. Millions died not from disease but from spontaneous biological breakdown as the fundamental forces holding their atoms together simply released. "In desperation, we made peace with what we once feared most," Q continued as the images showed. Human scientists working alongside shadowy entities that defied conventional physics. "Our greatest minds discovered that what we faced wasn't random at all, but the touch of something ancient." His skin rippled with shadowy patterns beneath the suit fabric, the expensive material straining but somehow containing the energies within. The air around him seemed to darken, not from any change in the lighting, but as if light itself was being gently absorbed. Death became our ally, not our enemy. The xenobiologists in the chamber frantically recorded readings, their scientific curiosity momentarily overriding their fear. The Arcadian delegates' 6 eyes widened in sequential order, their species' expression of profound shock. "Impossible," muttered Tay, the Dominion councillor who had ordered the attack. "No species can harness entropic force as a biological component." A flicker of something like a smile crossed Q's face. Humans are remarkably adaptable. The revelation stunned the council. Humans hadn't just mastered death, they had formed a partnership with it. The images showed the first volunteers, terminally ill patients with nothing to lose, allowing themselves to become vessels for fragments of the cosmic force that had threatened to destroy them. Instead of oblivion, they found symbiosis. What had once been humanity's greatest predator became their most profound protector. "Are all humans like you?" asked a small delegate from the aquatic Nerin species, their voice bubbling through their water-breathing apparatus. "No," Q replied, straightening his cuffs as the darkness temporarily receded beneath his skin. "Select individuals like myself serve as willing vessels for the cosmic force containing and directing it. We undergo decades of training to maintain control. I am what my people call a threshold diplomat, sent only to first contacts or potentially hostile situations." The implication hung in the air. Earth had known the Council might be dangerous, and had sent not just a diplomat, but a deterrent. The Council leader's personal guard, an 8-foot reptilian warrior in advanced powered armor, signaled to his squad. 6 elite soldiers activated their phase shields and surrounded Q, their weapons powered to maximum. "Stand down," warned Q, not as a threat, but as genuine concern. "I have no desire to harm anyone who doesn't attack first." The squad leader barked an order in his native tongue, and as one, the guards fired their weapons. Energy beams capable of cutting through battleship hull plating converged on the human. The delegates shielded their eyes from the blinding flash. When visibility returned, Q stood untouched in a perfect circle of undamaged floor. The energy had simply ceased to exist upon contact with him. "Life and death exist in balance," he explained, looking genuinely sad. "When you attempt to accelerate one, you will always find the other waiting." As more guards rushed forward, they too fell. Not from violence, but from the simple touch of the human diplomat. Q did not pursue them. He simply defended himself with minimal contact. Each guard that made contact aged visibly, not dying, but experiencing rapid cellular degradation that left them weakened and elderly in seconds. The more observant delegates noticed something remarkable. The guards who surrendered or stepped back remained unharmed. The human was showing restraint. "I came here to establish peaceful relations," Q said, his voice carrying despite the chaos. "That offer still stands." A small monitoring drone captured the human's transformation, broadcasting it to ships across the galactic arm. On thousands of worlds, beings watched as shadows moved beneath Q's skin, forming intricate patterns that matched no known language, but somehow conveyed profound meaning to all who saw them. For millennia, species across the universe have feared death and built entire civilizations trying to escape it, Q explained, the darkness around him pulsing like a heartbeat. Humans chose a different path. We embraced the inevitable and found something remarkable. Death itself has consciousness, purpose, even mercy. The Dominion counselors huddled behind their remaining guards, their arrogance replaced by naked fear. They had expected to make an example of a primitive species. Instead, they had revealed something that would forever change galactic politics. "Perhaps," said Councillor June, finding her courage, "we should reconvene this session under more diplomatic circumstances." Panic erupted across the chamber. Council members fled their ornate seats, translators squawking in 17 different languages, as diplomatic protocols collapsed into chaos. The massive environmental system pumped emergency calm-inducing pheromones into certain sectors, but nothing could soothe the primal fear now gripping the assembly. The Arcadian delegation's security beetles, organic drones the size of dinner plates, formed a protective swarm around their masters. The Vex automated security units that remained functional initiated their emergency response programming, metal bodies reconfiguring into defensive positions with weapons drawn. Through this chaos, Councillor Juan of the Peaceful Luminary Collective approached Q. Unlike most delegates, Juan moved toward the human rather than away. His species evolved on a world of constant light, their crystalline bodies refracting the chamber's emergency beacons in kaleidoscopic patterns. He raised his translucent hands, the universal gesture of peaceful intent across countless worlds. Many of us did not approve of this attack, Juan said, his voice chiming like glass bells through his translator. The Dominion threatened our worlds if we didn't support their plan. Behind him, several other counselors cautiously revealed themselves, representatives from smaller worlds and systems that had long lived under Dominion pressure. The Nor delegates' bioluminescent patterns flashed in agreement, while the avian Talari representative spread her wings in a gesture of solidarity. They control too many hyperspace junctions, added Councillor Park of the Ring Systems. His exoskeleton clicked nervously as he spoke. They threatened trade embargoes, orbital bombardment. We had no choice. Q nodded, his expression somber. The dark energy within him surged visibly beneath his skin, like storm clouds gathering, but remained contained. The shadows around him pulsed with each heartbeat, extending several centimeters beyond his physical form before retracting. I understand. Coercion, he said, his voice steady despite the unnatural resonance that made the chamber's crystal fixtures vibrate in sympathy. Earth's history is not without similar examples. The station's AI initiated lockdown procedures, massive barrier shields descending to isolate the council chamber. The barriers froze halfway, their control systems somehow disrupted by the anomalous energy surrounding the human. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red, casting long shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. With deliberate steps, Q walked toward the Dominion representatives. The polished floor beneath his feet momentarily dulled. Where he stepped, the material aging decades in seconds before returning to normal after he moved on. The Dominion officials cowered behind their remaining security forces, a mix of drone warriors and living soldiers encased in battle armor. Stand aside, Q told the guards. This is between leadership and leadership now. The captain of the Guard, a hulking four-armed veteran whose species had been genetically modified for warfare over hundreds of generations, activated his plasma shield and stepped forward. The Dominion does not negotiate with primitives, he growled. Q didn't break stride. When he reached the shield, he simply placed his palm against its energized surface. The shield, designed to withstand direct hits from capital ship weapons, flickered, destabilized, and dissipated like morning mist. The energy hadn't been countered or overcome. It had simply expired, its organized patterns reverting to base entropy. The guards parted, some dropping their weapons and retreating, others frozen in place as primal survival instincts warred. With their training, Councillor Tay and his fellow Dominion leaders huddled behind their ornate desk, their previous arrogance evaporated. Tay's ceremonial crests lay flat against his skull in the ultimate expression of submission for his species. Humanity extended a hand in peace, Q stated, his voice resonating unnaturally through the chamber. The translation system struggled to keep up, occasionally generating strange harmonics that made several species cover their auditory organs. You chose violence instead. We did not know, stammered Tay, his scales losing color. Your kind hid your true nature from us. We didn't hide anything, Q corrected. You simply didn't ask. You assumed we were primitive because our ships aren't as fast, our weapons not as powerful. You never considered that a species might measure advancement differently. The vast view screens that lined the chamber walls suddenly activated, showing real-time footage of Earth. Not the expected images of cities and technology, but rather quiet scenes. Humans tending gardens, teaching children, creating art, and, most surprisingly, humans in meditation halls communing peacefully with swirling shadows, identical to those now moving beneath Q's skin. We partnered with what you still fear, Q continued. We found harmony where you see only ending. With remarkable restraint, he touched only those who had orchestrated the assault. Not in anger or vengeance, but with the gentle precision of a physician. His fingers brushed against Tay's forehead, then moved to each of the 5 other Dominion leaders in sequence. They didn't die. Instead, they aged rapidly until they resembled their final moments of life, weakened but conscious. Wrinkles formed and deepened on their faces, scales dulled, and proud postures bent under sudden osteoporosis. Metabolisms that had been manipulated to grant centuries of life accelerated toward their natural conclusion, stopping just short of death itself. The chamber fell silent as the transformed Dominion leaders looked at their withered hands with horrified fascination. A reminder of what awaits all living things, Q explained. But not today, not by my hand. He straightened his tie, the darkness receding somewhat beneath his skin. Time is the great equalizer. Your scientists have spent millennia trying to defeat it through technology, genetic manipulation and cybernetics. Humans took a different approach. We befriended Time's final ambassador. From outside the council chamber came the sound of docking clamps engaging. On the external monitors, a sleek vessel of unmistakably human design had arrived. Unlike the utilitarian bulkiness of most human ships, this one had an unsettling organic quality, its black hull seeming to absorb rather than reflect light. That would be the rest of the diplomatic delegation, Q announced with the first hint of a smile. They felt a disturbance and came to investigate. Councillor June's translator struggled to find the right words as she asked the question everyone was thinking. Are they like you? No, Q replied, straightening his cuffs. I am what we call a threshold diplomat, the first contact specialist. They are... He paused, searching for terminology the aliens would understand. Think of them as the actual negotiating team. Relief visibly washed over the assembly until Q added, although two of them do host entities far older than the one partnered with me. The station's docking bay cameras showed the human ship's airlock cycling open. 3 humans emerged, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing the same immaculate black suits. Unlike Q, they appeared perfectly normal, without any visible darkness beneath their skin. Let us restart these proceedings properly, Q suggested, returning to the podium where his address had been so rudely interrupted. Earth still desires peaceful relations with all species of the galactic community. What happened here was unfortunate, but need not define our future interactions. The aged Dominion leaders, now supported by medical drones, looked at each other with newfound humility. Their empire had stood for 6,000 years on principles of strength and dominance. In less than an hour, those principles had been fundamentally challenged. A reminder, Q added softly, almost to himself, that the most dangerous beings in the universe are not always those with the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. Sometimes, they're simply those who have made peace with what everyone else still fears. 1 week later, the council reconvened. The chamber had been extensively renovated to remove all traces of the previous confrontation. New crystalline panels lined the walls, their surfaces pulsing with gentle light designed to promote calm across multiple species' neurological systems. Security had been completely overhauled. The mechanical VEX units replaced by a neutral third-party peacekeeping force of Kalian observers, their translucent bodies incapable of violence. Q sat at the negotiation table, his suit immaculate. Once more, no trace of the darkness that had manifested during the attack remained visible, though many delegates still kept a respectful distance. Beside him sat the 3 other human representatives who had arrived on the black ship. Chief, Negotiator Day, Cultural Liaison Jin, and Scientific Advisor Hana. All wore identical black suits that seemed to absorb more light than they should. Across the curved table, 17 species represented the major powers of the known galaxy. Most notable was the absence of the previous Dominion leadership. Their rapidly aged bodies had been transported back to their homeworld for medical treatment that, according to rumors, was proving frustratingly ineffective against whatever Q had done to them. Councillor Sun, newly appointed after the Dominion's leadership collapse, spoke carefully. His scales were a more vibrant green than his predecessors, marking him as significantly younger. The ceremonial crests on his head remained partially lowered, a sign of cautious respect rather than the arrogant display Tay had preferred. Before, we begin formal negotiations, Sun said, his translator module perfectly calibrated to remove any hint of aggression from his tone. We wish to understand the nature of your condition. The chamber's recording systems activated, capturing every word and gesture for the historical archives. Outside the station, a fleet of observation vessels from dozens of worlds hovered at a respectful distance, their sensors trained on the proceedings. News of what had happened during the first contact had spread across 7 galactic arms within days, turning these negotiations into the most watched diplomatic event in centuries. Q nodded, folding his hands on the table. I understand your concerns. Transparency will benefit us all. He gestured to Hannah, who activated a holographic display in the center of the table. Three-dimensional images appeared, historical footage from Earth showing the quantum plague that had nearly destroyed humanity 2 centuries earlier. The delegates watched as cities emptied, as people dissolved into component particles, as civilization teetered on the brink. 217 years ago, by Earth standard measurement, our world faced an existential threat unlike any we had encountered, Q explained. The quantum plague wasn't a conventional disease. It was the manifestation of something ancient taking notice of our world. The hologram shifted to show early containment efforts, scientists in isolation suits studying victims who seemed to age decades in minutes. Not all humans host what you call death, Q continued. Only those who volunteer after rigorous psychological evaluation. We carry this burden to ensure humanity's survival. The Arcadian representative leaned forward, compound eyes reflecting. The hologram. You speak of this entity as sentient. Are we to understand that what most species consider an abstract concept is, in your experience, a conscious force? Yes and no, answered Day, speaking for the first time. Unlike Q, she showed no signs of any darkness beneath her skin. What we discovered is that entropy itself, the universal tendency toward disorder, has patterns that resemble consciousness when viewed from certain perspectives. Not intelligence as you or I would recognize it, but something adjacent. A murmur ran through the assembly. The implications were staggering. And you communicate with this force? Asked the representative of the gaseous Vril collective, their containment bubble pulsing with nervous energy. We formed a symbiotic relationship, Q clarified. In exchange for hosting fragments of this cosmic force, we gained certain protections. The entities receive focused experience through us, something they find valuable, though their concept of value differs greatly from ours. Jin, the cultural liaison, added, throughout human history, our species has personified death in various mythologies. It seems those intuitions weren't entirely metaphorical. The hologram changed again, showing the first volunteer hosts, terminal patients with nothing to lose. The darkness entered them, extending their lives rather than ending them. Subsequent generations refined the process, developing the psychological techniques and physical preparations that allowed hosts to maintain control. The entities cannot be contained by technology, Hannah explained, as the hologram displayed failed mechanical containment attempts that resulted in catastrophic energy releases. They require living consciousness to provide structure and direction, Counselor. Sun's scales rippled with thoughtful patterns. And what prevents these entities from taking control, from using their hosts as weapons? Symbiosis requires balance, Q said simply. The entities have existed since the beginning of this universe. They have no interest in conquest, or power as you understand it. They seek experience, variety, perspective. We provide that. In return, they protect us. The revelation changed everything. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive now recognized them as beings who had transcended mortality's greatest fear. The Nor representatives' bioluminescent patterns flashed in rapid sequences, their expression of profound philosophical insight. Does it hurt? Asked a small, previously silent delegate from a world of permanent twilight. Carrying such a force within you? Q smiled for the first time since the negotiations began. No more than living hurts. We all carry the knowledge of our eventual end. Humans have simply found a way to make peace with it. Over the next several hours, the negotiations proceeded with remarkable efficiency. The previous Dominion-controlled Council had been restructured into a more equitable governing body. Sun, proving himself different from his predecessor, proposed a special committee to oversee peaceful integration of emerging spacefaring species. With Earth given a permanent seat, new treaties were drafted. Earth would receive full council, membership and protection. Their ships would be granted access to previously restricted hyperspace lanes. Research exchange programs would begin immediately, particularly focusing on human medical advances, which many species now viewed with newfound interest. In exchange, they would share limited cultural knowledge, but not the secrets of their partnership with cosmic forces. That would remain Earth's alone, a protection against those who might seek to weaponize such power. As the formal agreements were prepared for signing, the massive view screen at the chamber's front activated, showing a live feed from just outside the station. A Dominion battlecruiser had dropped out of hyperspace, an enormous wedge-shaped vessel bristling with weapon emplacements. "Counselor Sun," called the station's AI in its neutral voice, "we are receiving transmission from Dominion." "High Command." Sun's crests flattened against his skull. "It seems not all factions within the Dominion accept our new arrangement." The humans exchanged glances but showed no fear. Jin even smiled slightly. "Perhaps," suggested Q, straightening his perfect red tie, "this would be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate the practical advantages of peaceful cooperation with Earth." The battlecruiser's weapons systems began powering up, energy readings climbing toward firing thresholds. Inside the council chamber, the delegates watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as the three human diplomats beside Q stood, in perfect unison. "With the council's permission," said Day calmly, "our vessel would like to assist with this diplomatic misunderstanding." On the view screen, the small black human ship, barely 1/100th the size of the Dominion battlecruiser, detached from the station and moved toward the threat, its hull seeming to drink in the starlight around it. 6 months passed. The Great Galactic Council Station orbiting Vega had transformed dramatically. New wings had been constructed specifically to accommodate human diplomatic needs, though visitors noted these wings had curious energy-dampening properties and gravity, fluctuations that defied explanation. Earth vessels now regularly docked at the station, their sleek black hulls standing in stark contrast to the more ornate or utilitarian designs of other species. Earth representatives became a common sight in council chambers, though other species maintained a respectful distance. The incident with the Dominion battlecruiser had become legendary. How the tiny human vessel had simply approached the massive warship and without firing a single weapon had caused all energy systems aboard to simultaneously fail. The crew had been found alive but disoriented, with no memory of what they had intended to do. The battlecruiser itself had been towed back to Dominion space, its weapons systems mysteriously aged beyond repair, while the life support remained perfectly functional. The central promenade of the station bustled with activity as diplomats from 17 major civilizations and dozens of minor ones gathered for the Unity celebration, marking the successful integration of Earth into the galactic community. Holographic displays showed statistical improvements in cross-species trade, scientific advancement, and conflict reduction across multiple sectors. Q stood near a viewport overlooking the spectacular stellar nursery that had made Vega space so strategically valuable. His black suit remained his signature, though he had adopted a new tie pin, a small silver emblem representing Earth's new position on the Council. The reception hall hummed with translator chatter as species with wildly different biochemistries and neural structures attempted to navigate the complex waters of interstellar diplomacy. Robotic servers moved through the crowd with specially designed refreshments for each biological category present. In one corner, a delegation of methane-breathing zeoids communicated with silicon-based lithians through a specialized interface, discussing a joint mining operation that would have been unthinkable before Earth's mediating influence. Young Council aide Moon approached Q with uncharacteristic boldness. Unlike most station staff who still avoided prolonged contact with humans, Moon had shown genuine curiosity about Earth and its representatives. His scaled skin glistened with youth, his species' natural bioluminescent patterns displaying what xenobiologists had identified as intellectual interest. "Ambassador Q," he said, offering the traditional greeting gesture of his people, a complex movement of fingers that humans had difficulty replicating. "The Central Committee has approved your proposal for the Cultural Exchange Initiative. Construction of the first human embassy begins next cycle." Q nodded appreciatively. "Excellent news. Please convey my thanks to the committee." Mun hesitated, his inner eyelids flickering in what humans had learned indicated internal conflict. Finally, he blurted out the question many had wondered, but few dared ask directly. Is it painful, containing such a force? Around them, several nearby conversations quieted as others strained to hear the answer. Even after 6 months, the true nature of humanity's relationship with what they called the entities remained the most discussed topic in xenobiological circles across the galaxy. Q smiled genuinely. No more painful than living with the knowledge of mortality. All sentient beings carry that burden. We simply found a way to make peace with it. He gestured toward the viewport, where a distant supernova remnant could be seen, the spectacular aftermath of a stellar death that had occurred millennia ago, its light only now reaching them. Your people seek immortality through technology, Q continued. The Arcadians through genetic manipulation, the Vril through consciousness uploading. Humans tried all these paths too once, but we discovered something unexpected when we stopped, fighting against the inevitable, and instead embraced it as part of the natural order. Across the reception hall, the other human representatives engaged with various delegations. Day, the chief negotiator, was deep in discussion with the Kalian peacekeepers, who had developed a particular fascination with human art. Jin demonstrated traditional Earth calligraphy to a group of fascinated Nor scientists, the ink seemingly absorbing more light than physics should allow. Hana stood with the station's chief xenobiologist, comparing notes on a newly discovered species that appeared to have naturally evolved a relationship with entropic forces similar to, but distinct from, humanity's symbiosis. The Dominion has officially changed its position on emerging worlds, Mun noted, changing the subject slightly. 3 new species have been granted observer status in the past month alone. Q nodded. Fear often drives oppression. When a civilization believes resources are finite and time is limited, they become desperate to control both. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't our technology, or even our unique biology. It's the perspective that comes from making peace with endings. Across the galaxy, perspectives on humanity shifted. Initial fear had given way to cautious respect, then to genuine curiosity. They weren't conquerors or warriors. They were philosophers who had solved existence's greatest riddle by embracing rather than fighting their inevitable end. The newest addition to the Council Station had become its most visited, the human contemplation garden, where visitors could experience guided meditation with human instructors. Most came out of curiosity, but returned with questions about their own mortality. Some even reported glimpsing shadowy patterns at the edges of their vision during particularly deep sessions, though humans neither confirmed nor denied the significance of these experiences. 3 days later, Q prepared for his next diplomatic mission, mediating a centuries-old territorial dispute between the crystalline Thalians and the fungoid network mind of the Mycon Collective. His new ship waited in the docking bay, smaller than most diplomatic vessels, but with a peculiar presence that made station technicians work quickly when servicing it. In his private quarters, Q straightened his tie and brushed an invisible speck from his sleeve. The mirror showed only a human diplomat, not the cosmic force contained within. For a moment just before turning away, his eyes darkened slightly, not with malice, but with something older than emotion, a brief acknowledgement between host and entity. A notification chimed, informing him that the disputed sector had experienced an unexpected astronomical event, a rogue black hole passing through the contested territory, rendering the primary resource moon uninhabitable. Both sides had requested Earth's mediation with new urgency. Perfect timing, Q murmured, though whether he spoke to himself or to the entity within him remained unclear. As his ship detached from the station and prepared for hyperspace transit, the Council's new emergency response director, formerly Councillor Sun of the Dominion, watched from the observation deck. "They're changing everything," he remarked to his aide, "not through conquest or technology, but by changing how we think about existence itself." The small black ship vanished into hyperspace, barely creating a ripple in the quantum foam. But the galaxy now knew. Humans hadn't conquered death. They had befriended it, and in doing so they had become something neither predator nor prey, but something entirely new in the cosmic order. The End.